Financial inclusion has taken a revolution under the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. How will the next phase of remittances and transactions get achieved? Aadhaar has been the linkage of DBT to beneficiaries. Limited success till now. What are the reasons and what is the way forward? How to make the zero balance accounts attractive for low income groups for banking services? What are the ideas and collaborations? How easy or difficult is financial literacy campaigns in rural and marginalized area? Localization, is that the need of the hour? Collaboration with government departments to achieve 100% DBT across all schemes, strategies, and challenges. I would request the session chair, Mr. S. Ganesh Kumar, CGM and in charge, Department of ID, Reserve Bank of India, to take the panel discussion forward.
Am I audible? Yeah. Can we start? Okay, good afternoon. The afternoon sessions are challenging, but then if you're going to talk about a digital session or a virtual session by people sitting here, maybe we'll try to make it a little more interesting. The central bank or the Reserve Bank in India's case gets the pride of place by starting first. My fellow panelists gave me the honor of saying that why don't we start off by the introductory comments from your side. Maybe in ways more than one, the Reserve Bank has been trying to do its best in trying to get things on. But before I start off on that, maybe we can have a quick round of introductions of my fellow panelists, and maybe I can start from my right side. Vibhu, you'd like to start off?
So my name is Vibhu Arya. I head strategic partnerships and alliances at Snapdeal.com, one of India's largest e-commerce marketplace.
Hi, I'm Aspi Engineer from Yes Bank. I head the ATM and new payment initiatives for Yes Bank. I have about 22 odd years of experience that I bring out here.
Hi, I am Mukund Kulkarni, General Manager IT and Operations, Bank of Maharashtra.
Hi, I'm Jayant Bhatia. I head the digital and payment initiatives for Standard Chartered Bank.
Hi, I'm Aditya Chaugule. I head electronic banking and projects at IndusInd Bank.
You'd have noticed that we have got 4 bankers and one person who's going to possibly help the bankers and help all of you in trying to get along. We have snapped a deal with him, and then we'll see how the snap deal journey takes us forward. We're running slightly behind schedule, so what we thought was instead of each of us trying to talk, we will possibly have a few points or a few questions, and we will try to answer each of those. And then towards the end of it, we will leave it open when you can ask questions, and we will try our level best to give answers. But before that, let me try to give what the vision of the Reserve Bank is there as far as moving over to a digital economy is concerned. One of the things that we have noticed in this economy, in fact, I joined the Reserve Bank of India around 2 decades ago. And when I joined the bank at that point of time, I never imagined that I could do transactions without actually having physical cash. I never thought that I could, let's say, talk to my mother or father while traveling in a train because mobile phones were not there. And I never thought that a bank means that you can sit at home or sit in office and try to do the banking transactions. But today all that is reality. In the last 1 decade, the Reserve Bank is trying to do what we call in the developmental role, push towards electronic transactions, push towards digital transactions. And more than looking at it as a regulator, we try to do a facilitator's role. There have been a lot of products and services which have come in the e-commerce space, which have come in the electronic space, which have been pushed by the Reserve Bank of India. Now the markets are mature, the banking sector is mature, the e-commerce industry is mature, the IT industry is providing the support. So now I think it's time that the Reserve Bank as a regulator steps backward. Some of you may be saying, why do we have this irritant in the form of a 2-factor authentication? Some of you may say, why we don't have a 3rd-factor authentication to ensure that a fraud doesn't happen? So while I will not try to say what the view of Reserve Bank will be from a security perspective, because we will open up security as a topic for discussion, the only thing that I would like to say is that the Reserve Bank is committed to move away from paper. Those of you who have tried to use checks for using payments will find that we have tried to reduce the efficiency of check clearing because we want people to move away from checks to electronic. electronic-based transactions are going on. To such an extent, in the morning we had the Chief Minister of this state coming over, because we are also aggressively moving over towards having electronic tax and electronic payments of the government also move in a seamless manner. That's as far as the government is concerned. But as far as the common man is concerned, as far as the banks are concerned, and as far as the service providers are concerned, the digital movement is on. We've done a few pilots for the digital wallets, what we call as e-wallets or mobile wallets or e-cash or whatever be the names that you call. Some of them have been very encouraging, and typically we do all these pilot projects in small lots in academic institutes like the IITs and other colleges, because the age group of 20 to 25 is when people dare to actually try out what they want. I'm sure my fellow panelists from the banking sector will say that it's the younger customer who wants to try out the new methods. Snapdeal will try to say out of the total millions of customers that they have, if they do an age profile, most of them will be below 30, I guess, right? So that's the group which is going to do it. Some of us here are on the other side, but then I'm sure that all of us are going over towards electronic movements, digital. I'll talk more about these later on, but before we talk about what is going to be there, I thought we'll flag some issues. And the first thing which will come to our mind is about security. What happens, let's say, if I have a digital wallet and the wallet gets stolen? Is my money lost? The answer is no. But if my money is not lost, how do I get it back? I've lost my pocket, like a pickpocket has taken the purse off, but can I get the cash back and reuse it if I want to go back in a taxi home after the pickpocket had done it in the railway station? The answer is no. But is the same facility or something better than that available in a mobile wallet? The answer is yes. I'm not going to go into detail, but how do we take care of security? What are the weak links in security? What are the things that we have to take care of security in a digital environment, especially when we are talking about digital cash or digitalization in general? That is something that we will talk about. The second thing which we may talk about, especially from an e-commerce perspective, is what are the attitudinal changes that we need to do? What are the attitudinal changes that have been brought on? And Vibhu has an interesting experience to share with some of my fellow bankers, where he says, apart from giving products on sale, which are typically for the retail customers, he says, I've got a service offering on sale for bankers to log on. Maybe he will talk about it as he goes along. Kulkarni will be talking a little bit about some of the initiatives which Bank of Maharashtra is doing. One of the potential killer applications which is going to take place in the very near future is going to be those which are linked to the mobile phone. Whether we use it for talking or not, we are certainly going to use it for a host of other functions, and that is what we are looking into it, what Bank of Maharashtra has done, what is it that is there, which is where we come to the area of financial inclusion. All of you must have heard about the success story of the number of accounts being opened under the Jan Dhan Yojana scheme. How are we going to take it forward? How is financial inclusion going to happen? How is it that money that goes into that, the accounts of these small accounts are going to be used? How are the withdrawals going to take place? How is it going to be settled? These are some of those things we'll be talking. Jayant may also be talking about it from the StanChart experience as to how is it that is going to be taken. And then we'll end up with Chougule talking about the experiences from an IndusInd Bank perspective. I'll stop more before becoming a compulsive bore. I've raised a few questions. I'm sure my fellow panelists will be able to give convincing answers to all of you. At the end of it, maybe 5-10 minutes, we will have an open house discussion. So I will leave it open. Unlike Karnab Goswami, in times now, we will not all talk at the same point of time. That's the one common rule that we have agreed to. But then we will all talk and we will all contribute. At the end of it, you will certainly get a lot of value addition. Thanks for the patient hearing, and I leave it to who would like to start. Aspi will take over, and Alphabet first. He also engineers a lot of deals, so I think ideally it's the best. Yes.
Thank you, Ganeshji. So one of the first topics that Ganeshji said was about security. For all the electronic channels today that we are talking about, yes, we as bankers, we as e-commerce people do put in all the best of security, whether it be two-factor, to counter man in the middle, to all the other things that we do. But today, where is the weakest link in the chain of whether it's banking or e-commerce? It's the human customer himself. If he is going to part away with his PIN number or his password to somebody, or if his pocket gets picked and he's got his debit card in there with his PIN number written on it, how can you really protect that? So therefore, we believe that education of the end customer is very, very critical. We really need to ensure that the customer is made aware of the do's and don'ts that are needed to try and ensure that his money, which he has kept safely with us and which is in our trust and we look after it with the best of possible security measures, is really not lost because of maybe his carelessness. The bank will take all precautions, the e-commerce guys will take all their precautions, but if he is going to part away with something like this on a phishing call or on a wishing call, then what does the bank do? What does an e-commerce guy do? So that's something that's a big challenge for all of us. And I believe that the weakest link is today, unfortunately, the customer. And he needs to be trained, educated, made aware of the possibilities of and the do's and don'ts that he needs to take care of.
So Aspi, one of the points that I was reading about online actually a few days back, and one of the key reasons that we try to look at the West in terms of the adoption of mobile wallets, mobile payments, less use of cash at the stores, etc. And the fact is that latest research shows that in few of the retail outlets where Apple Pay was actually enabled, that 30% of the transactions happen through Apple Pay. Now, when they actually went in the second level of research with the consumers there, in terms of why didn't the mobile wallets take off in the first place, of what is the inherent reason for it, right? For it not to take off. I mean, it's got all big names. You'll have the right security measures behind it. The biggest reason that the customers told that I'm really worried about how my card data, how my cash data, how my personal data can be used by the merchant or by the store or by anybody and can be misused in terms of driving it across. And with Apple Pay, educating in terms of how it manages payments seamlessly, where everything is stored on your phone and it's not even stored at anybody's servers, etc. There's no intermediary. And the fact is that it's taken off that quickly within the span of 3 to 4 months. So security becomes key. Even if you go last mile, even from a financial inclusion perspective, that if you're able to guarantee security to the end consumer, saying that in whatever mode that you do your payments, do your management of cash or any kind of delivery per se, you will need to ensure that you drive home the message that your transactions are secure, it's encrypted, there are various technologies behind it, but as Aspi pointed out, is the doing a knowledge series. There have been tons of banks doing knowledge series all across, but at the end of the day, what really matters is that have we done enough? Is two-factor authentication enough? Is bringing that to one-factor authentication for small value transaction, does it enable? And that's something that we need to drive from a technology point of view. I'll probably ask Mr. Kulkarni to spend some time on explaining on how Bank of Maharashtra is driving this agenda.
Yeah. On the topic, when we are talking about this cashless economy and we are expecting to go for a cashless economy, what I want to say on the subject is that if you take the case of ATM, the large number of ATMs were installed during the last 1 or 2 years only. Before that, the ATM population was not much. So ATMs are also grown in number during the last 1 year. And take the case of your card issuance. I think the card issuance, taking the total number of accounts into account, 45 to 50% of the cards are still yet to be issued to the account holders. So unless these cards are issued and customers are enabled with all these debit cards, the transactions would not improve. That is that I want to say. At the same time, the awareness of the customer, that means he should be comfortable while using all these alternative channels of payments. Take the case of ATM or POS machine. The customer should be comfortable. He should be secured while doing all these transactions. And when this trustworthiness will improve, then only I think the transactions on all these alternative channels will improve. At the same time, in some other countries, some incentives are also given for doing the POS transactions. Take the case of Korea. In Korea, for POS transactions, the merchants are given some tax concession. If the 50% of the cash transactions are online, they are given some tax concession. At the same time, I have read one article in Economic Times which speaks that in our tax laws, it is said that when the credit card transaction exceeds certain limits, automatically the case is taken for scrutiny. So these are the negative operating on these other alternative channels of payments. That point I want to stress here.
I'll just add to what Mr. Kulkarni had said. Every 3 years, Reserve Bank of India comes up with a vision document on its payment system. So the last document they had come out in 2012. And if you actually compare the document of 2012 vision statement vis-a-vis 2009 vision statement, there were two phrases which were new into that vision. One was interoperability and the other was inclusiveness. So I think the whole of digitalization, if you really look as to where the future lies towards achieving a less cash economy, in fact that is also RBI's word. They don't use the term cashless, they always use the term less cash. It's basically interoperability of the proliferation of electronic platforms that have taken place over a period of time. I mean, it is not too distant in past when RTGS started, and now we are already having RTGS, NEFT, NPCI has started IMPS payment. Within IMPS, you have multiple P2P, P2A, P2M. There is NASH which has started. There is Aadhaar-based payment systems which are going to start. Basically, there has to be an interoperability because there is going to be a huge data. One of the item of security, just to what ASPI has mentioned, is also management of a commonality of identity. So the same person, when he comes to a bank and he gets awarded a cust ID, that's one identity. The same person comes to a branch and does an RTGS transaction on the fly, it's another identity. The same person gets a digital signature as a security, he gets another identity. Ultimately, when the transactions take place, you have no way of identifying or tracking an individual with all his commercial habits end to end. So I think digitalization definitely has gone to a huge, I mean, there was this survey you would have read about the IMAS survey this last year, 2014. There were 800 million transactions. But if we are looking at a truly cashless society, then I think somewhere the interoperability of the platforms and extending that to the last mile or what can be called as inclusiveness is going to be very important.
Okay, that perhaps gave an idea about security. I'll just take half a minute off on a little bit of anecdote. In the nearby Surat, there's a lot of trade which takes place in zari and diamonds. I don't know how many of you have gone there. You will find that there is a pure cashless society working there. Now let's assume that I'm a silk sari manufacturer down south in Kanchipuram and I have come here to buy zari for the border in the sari. The way this works is, I come with a demand draft from a bank, let's say State Bank of India for 20,000 rupees. I come to the shop, I haggle, bargain, buy, give the 20,000 draft. It's written in name of somebody who's not the shop owner. I come out to him, if ASPI is the shop owner, I give the 20,000 draft to him. He goes, the draft makes rounds for 90 days till the validity is almost getting over. On the 89th day, whoever holds the draft gets the draft endorsed in his name, goes to the nearest bank or where he has an account and the draft is encashed. Have you heard about this? This is how it happens. There's no cash. Movement of cash takes place without any cash. There is only one DD which is taken for 20,000 rupees, which means he must have paid 15 or 20 rupees as the commission to the bank which was originally issued it. And a whole series of transactions took place on one draft. Why? Because the confidence on the draft is much more than a confidence on, let's say, on a check. The security that a person holds by getting a draft is there. I happened to visit Surat 7-8 years ago. I'm talking of this case about 7-8 years ago. And when this guy was going, and I was trying to pretend as if I am a purchaser, he was saying, "Aapke paas Mica check hai, Mica check hai." Mica mujhe malum hai ki that is there and the Formica on the table, anything, I do not know. Then when on closer, he's saying, do you have an MICR or a MICR check? A man who doesn't know security understands security. Can we achieve this level of security? The point is the last mile, the customer is the most important person in the chain. Can we make life easy for him? If you say it is two-factor authentication, three-factor, whatever it is, but is it something that he easily understands and he practices every time? Maybe that's what we'll have to look about, and that's the vision that Reserve Bank is trying to look at it. When the talk was about the payment system vision document, which is there, yes, once in 3 years, we say what are the things that have to be changed in the payment system scenario. And one of the things that we are saying, which is going to come in the next, is to make the payment systems safe but simple. That's the key to making them easy. And why is it the thrust is being given to the mobile space? That's because that is something which has become very, very easy. And again, I'll go back to an anecdote. 6 years ago, when the financial inclusion had just then started, we had a partnership with Fino, which is one of the leading business correspondents in the space. We had been to one of the northeastern states in a village. I had actually accompanied Mrs. Usha Thorat, who was a deputy governor. So we were trying to find out, go from village to village, find what it is. There was in one village an old lady. So one of the representatives from Fino was trying to teach her, Maji, ye hai, aapka handheld device, you have to do this, this. This lady was patiently hearing everything. After the whole thing was over, she took out her mobile and said, Beta, मुझे ये मालूम है, आपके पास जो है ये इससे कम है. She had at that time a smartphone. She doesn't know how to read, she doesn't know how to write, but she knew how to use a smartphone because her son was in a place which was away, and to communicate, she needed a means of communication. As a community Indians, we are a talkative lot. I've been talking the most, I think, in amongst the panels. So as long as talking is there and as long as mobiles are there, there is going to be the use of the mobile. If we can use the mobile for payments, that's going to be the future. Which is why we are trying to see whether the Jan Dhan Yojana accounts can be linked to the mobile, whether that can be linked to the Aadhaar. And if that is done, the electronification of the payments can take place through the mobile, and that can perhaps work. In that context, security we have spoken of. How do we take other killing technologies or killer applications forward? Maybe I would request Vibhu to talk about what Snapdeal is doing, then we'll come back to the others on some of the other aspects which you would like to talk. Yes.
Thank you, sir. So essentially, if you look at the country, close to 1 billion people have, mobile phones, and a large portion of these people have a smartphone, and then they have apps sitting. So, if really, it's for banks and financial institutions to, the customer is there, he has a smartphone with 3G connectivity, and it's about you building appropriate products which are convenient to use, which are safe to use, that they'll be able to embrace, digitization of financial services and banking. So it's a big opportunity, and entrepreneurs and new companies have been able to, in some way, if I can use a word, disrupt the market for, let's say, taxi services, restaurant bookings, retail. Likewise, I think banks can truly innovate to really get get their customers who are willing to experiment, who have the infrastructure, which I say is a smartphone and with internet connectivity. And here are banks. I mean, it's for them to really put together appropriate products at their target group who can do it. Talking specifically from Snapdeal's perspective, I'll just share a use case of how we are trying to use technology to bridge. So, okay, Snapdeal is essentially an e-commerce marketplace which is connecting buyers and sellers. So we have close to 100,000 sellers. When I say a seller is a business. It could be a sole proprietorship, partnership, private limited, public limited. It needs to have a PAN number, TIN number, and a current account number. And you can register to start selling on Snapdeal. So we have close to 100,000 of these sellers, and you have close to 50 million customers on Snapdeal, of which we get a very large portion of them visiting Snapdeal every day and doing a lot of transactions. So Snapdeal has built a platform which you call as Capital Assist, wherein bankers, non-banking finance companies and banks, etc., can connect to that platform to finance these sellers with the 100,000 I'm talking about who are selling on Snapdeal. And you can finance them basis their transaction history, basis their ratings, basis their customer, the feedback from customers, basis their turnover, etc. So there are some very interesting metrics around which you can build a product program for financing small, medium businesses, which hitherto have really been under, have not been able to access for formal credit. So this is a new opportunity for banks to embrace.
I'll just add to that. Thanks, Vibhu. One of the primary reasons, one of the success factors that we will see in the next few years to come is the fact that how fast do the merchants adopt to the ecosystem of accepting electronic payments, right? Today, if you go to a Shopper Stop or a Lifestyle, today, even in that kind of a format, we still have almost 50% of the transactions still happening through cash. That number hovers close to whatever it is in that range itself. One of the primary reasons, so if you look at it, right, over 10 million merchants in the country, and almost only 500,000 merchants have an electronic payment acceptance capability. Now, why is that? How can we solve for that, right? What are the three broad reasons this has not taken off? So let's say the four-way system, which is, let's say Visa, Master, RuPay, the acquiring bank, the issuing bank, the merchant. Why has the four-way system not really taken off to increasing electronic acceptance in the country, right? The merchant finds it very cumbersome. I'll tell you why. He finds the machine very expensive to invest in, point number one. There is a huge transaction fees associated with it. So for example, in a trader, that if he's running with a, let's say 4 to 5% margin, if he ends up paying 1.5–2% margin as interchange cost or transaction fees, how much money is he going to make, right, at the end of the day? There are issues with respect to settlement. With respect to cash, he gets cash immediately, and there are settlement issues in terms of whether you can do settlement in T+1, T+2, etc. How do you really solve for it? And while there are some guidelines from RBI coming across in terms of asking banks to look at it, some of the things that at least banks are looking into right now are driving cheaper mobile POS solutions, right? So a machine which is worth 10–12,000 bucks earlier would probably be as cheap as 3,000 bucks now. How do you do instant settlements? Okay, driving IMPS, driving and uses of technologies from that perspective. That really helps remove the entry barrier of the settlement delays that is there. And net, how do you really cut down the MDR and make it affordable for the merchant to ensure that he adopts it to it, right? At the end of the day, the regulator, the government, banks are all happy if there is more money circulating electronically rather than remaining outside the banking system per se. But at the end of the day, it's very important that we get the merchant ecosystem adopting the use of technology and acceptance infrastructure, because there is no point I go and distributing 100 million debit cards or 100 million ATM cards when there aren't enough ATM machines are across it. You go to tier 3, tier 4, there is hardly electricity going on for 2 hours in a day. How will the ATM work, right? So what do we really do to solve for that and drive it across? And coming to the point that mobile becomes absolutely key, because with the 1 billion mobile connection that is in the country, so assume that with one person having 1.3 odd connections, there's around 650 million unique users on mobile today itself. And that's something that we need to focus upon, because that's easier to use from a tier 3, tier 4 perspective as well. And we can probably educate on technology and usage early on rather than waiting for a later date, because we as bankers always want to drive that agenda, because the cost per doing a banking transaction on a mobile is 1/10 than the guy coming to the branch and doing a transaction. So that's clearly in the interest of us as well.
So just taking ahead from where you're saying, so you're right. So every customer or every individual who has a mobile today or a handheld device or a tab is a potential customer for a bank. And it's a way for the customer to be reached. It's for him, he can reach us through that, or we can reach him through that. Secondly, the point that he was rightly saying is that reducing the cost. Today, a branch transaction today could cost anything between 40 to 50 rupees per transaction. An ATM transaction comes down to about 18 to 15 bucks. And online is about 4 rupees. And if you go down further, mobile is even lower than that. So we definitely need to educate and ensure that the customer and the banks reach out with the least cost of servicing of its own existing customers and future customers as well. This will also, we need to work towards virtual interaction versus a physical interaction today, which most Indians are more comfortable to a physical interaction of something that we can touch and feel. But can we actually move towards a virtual interaction? Can we work towards a video teller? That somebody is there in the background, you can go pick up a phone, you'll see him at the other end. Can you talk on the phone? He'll solve your problems. He could be a financial advisor to you. He can solve your queries if your account has been debited, you've not got your cash. Can he solve it that way? So those are the things that the banks will also look towards. One is reducing the cost of servicing existing customers, maybe onboarding new customers, because if I can go with a tab banking and go across to a customer's house, open his account out there, or do an online account openings like the way State Bank did at the InTouch branches, okay? It really will reduce the cost for the bank and overall make it more profitable for all of us.
Just to talk about the video interaction, it's a very interesting point SP brought. We at IndusInd had actually launched one app which will give you, from the benefit of your mobile, whether it is Android or iPhone, a video interaction with customer care representative. And just within a period of 3 months, we see significant improvement a rather significant reduction in certain specific sections of society or specific sections of branches into the footfall of customers coming into the branch, or also into the traffic that was going to traditional customer care unit. And the customer's own impression of physically talking face to face vis-a-vis a virtual face-to-face talking is that much more positive and that much more encouraging. So it genuinely has a customer satisfaction and customer impact effect into having this kind of technology enhancement.
So my colleagues talked about this mobile banking and that, but one more channel is also very important, that is BC channel, because we are finding that some sections of the society are still not very comfortable directly going to the ATM machine or POS machine and doing the transaction. In such a case, the BC model will be definitely a useful model. And through BC model, we can very well educate the client also. So the BC should be, they should be sensitized, and capacity building is required at the BC level. Because on micro ATMs, we can do the transaction, Aadhaar-based transactions by using biometric also. At the same time, now bankers are trying to use this micro ATM with the help of a card and PIN. So all these ways of doing the transactions on micro ATM are available. So BC model, I am hopeful that it is going to be useful in the days to come.
Yeah, I'll try to wrap up a little bit about whatever we discussed now. The prelude to the BC model, which Mr. Kulkarni Mukund was just trying to say, I don't know how many of you have tried the cash out using cards at merchant establishments. The Reserve Bank did, yeah, at the POS, at the point of sale terminals at the merchant establishments, you have your card, you can go there, and up to a certain value, the merchant can give cash instead of you having to go to an ATM or any other such device. It started off, in fact, the Reserve Bank thought that it will be a good potential, a lot of things can happen, but we find that the volumes are some things which we hate to even talk about. That means that there is no real need for this. But however, the business correspondent model is really proving to be very, very beneficial for the banking sector. It's actually impossible or unprofitable for a bank to open a branch to service a small set of customers who may be visiting the branch maybe once in a week or at best once in a month, especially in the rural areas. Given the challenges relating to electricity access, network connectivity, etc., that is where the BC comes into play. In fact, one of the opportunities that the Reserve Bank was trying to look at 4 or 5 years ago was when the STD, ISD, PCO booths were losing the business. We said, why don't they become the business correspondents? Unfortunately, that did not happen, but if it had happened, possibly the country would have had some amount of benefit. But then BCs are certainly going to be there. That's one thing. Another point which I just wanted to talk about was the role that the Aadhaar card is playing today. Can I just try to find out how many of us don't have an Aadhaar number here in this group? Can you just raise your hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe if I start counting, it may be half a dozen or a dozen. In a group of around 150, 200 people, if this is the number, that shows the level to which the Aadhaar card population has increased. I'm not sure whether the UIDAI people in the counter there are here, and it's a credit to them. But then what is this going to be used for? I have a PAN number, I have a driving license number, I have a social security number given by the Ministry of Home Affairs, I have a passport number, I have one more number called the Aadhaar number. How am I going to use all this? First of all, I cannot remember. And on top of all this, the bank gives me an account number which is typically from 12 digits to 15 digits, which I cannot remember. How does the customer ensure that he remembers something which will ensure that money comes to his account or goes from his account? Here we are trying to do an initiative where we try to link the Aadhaar number, all the numbers which I said, link them all and have one unique reference number to a customer. So let's say I'm Ganesh Kumar, my number is let's say 12345. This will be linked to my account which may be in Bank of Maharashtra, maybe linked to my account which is in Axis Bank, maybe linked to my passport, my driving license, everything is linked. This will be in one central database, perhaps in the National Payments Corporation or in some other organization of that type. I need to remember only that, and based on that, I can either get funds into that account or take funds out of the account. One other advantage that is there in this is all of us hesitate to give the account number to anybody else. Not that it can be misused. Even as bankers, I know we hesitate to give the account number, although it cannot be used for any purpose. Now we need to share only this number, which cannot be used by anybody else. We are trying to work towards this. This is called a pseudo account number. There are other names which is called at various countries. Most of the European countries are actually working on this. You would have already seen that in some of the Scandinavian countries, you can take a check of, let's say, Central Bank of India, go to Canara Bank, and he will give you cash. Okay, that's how it works there, but they are small countries, less than the size of even Mumbai, so it works. But we are trying to work on that direction. That's one. Interoperability is what Chowgule was trying to say. We are also moving towards that direction. For some of my banker friends here, I'll try to give a little bit of comfort. The entire payment and other funds-based space will use a standard which is called the ISO 20022. That's the fixed standard. Now, whether it's going to be RTGS, whether it is NEFT, whether it is ECS, whether it is a payment which takes place through Snapdeal using my credit card, IRCTC, anything, it will follow this standard. It's not happening today, but over a period of time, we are going to make it happen. If that happens, it is interoperable. So whichever be the model which works later on, if it could be mobile, it could be IMPS, it could be through credit card, it could be through any other means, ITZ, etc., it will be a standardized model. So merchants needn't worry. Service integrators need not have to develop routines which work for them. The banks will not have a problem, and customers also will, such of those of them who have some device, it could be an iPad or it could be a terminal, which has a small banking software at its end, can convert that into a message which is readable. So that is something which is going to bring a big fillip. It is also available in some form as an app which can be downloaded for free in the mobile phone and can be used. So this is another sneak preview as to what is going to happen in this space. So watch out for Aadhaar. Those who don't have Aadhaar, it doesn't matter, but at the same time, if it is available, it helps. And the last thing is, how many of us will be very happy if there is an income tax refund, the refund comes without we asking for it? Today, it's difficult to get an income tax refund, or any other refund for that matter from the government. We are again working with the government to see that these things take place electronically. After all, the income tax assessee or the income tax payee is a valuable customer, a valuable citizen of the government. The government has accepted it now. The Central Board of Direct Taxes is working in this direction. Most of us must have already experienced the refunds of income tax taking place electronically. Tomorrow that will also take place in a manner which I submit my income tax return online within a matter of 48 hours or 72 hours, depending on whatever be the threshold that they give. The turnaround time will be there and the money will get credited to my account automatically. I use that money to, let's say, pay my service tax for some service that I availed of from the government or for any other purpose which has happened. I don't know how many of us have experienced the LPG credit that is coming to us. There is a debate going on as to whether the group in this room really deserve that subsidy. But such of us who have got it, you would have been surprised to find that it is taking place on time, maximum within 48 hours of the cylinder being delivered to your houses. That is an example which is really proven. In fact, we are working on another slightly different model. A small project is going on in the IIT Mumbai here. The gas cylinders are connected to a small device which 24 hours before it gets completely empty, sends a signal across to the gas distributor, let's say Bharat Petroleum. Bharat Petroleum in turn sends a message across to the GPS-enabled trucks which are sending the cylinder. And 7 o'clock in the morning, or let's say 5 o'clock in the morning, there's a knock on the door and the madam goes half awake and she's told, Madam, aapka cylinder aa gaya hai idhar. Instead of she having to book a cylinder, the cylinder comes at the time which is there. And in the night, the person's account, the cylinder owner's account is debited in the bank, credit goes to Bharat Petroleum. This process has worked very well. It's a complete digital process, no authentication, no security, nothing, but it's working very well. So we are trying to look at these type of initiatives which are going to push us to the digital economy of the future.
So this is what the West calls the Internet of Things. So it's very happy, glad that we're doing it here in India.
Thanks. Why I thought I'll tell you is, typically people think Reserve Bank is a regulator and they are only out to prevent things from happening. We try to also showcase models, then leave it to the market to see whether they take it forward or not. Yes, as you wanted to say.
Another area that maybe we should try and look at is social media today, and how does it really help in terms of banking? Can we utilize that in some form or the other? I'd like to ask some of the panel members to maybe throw some light on that.
Yeah, Twitter payment is now started. Kotak Bank has initiated P2P payment. They are linking it to a tweet, so the beneficiaries' transactions can take place. I think in Western world, you have all these virtual banks like Simple.com and all. They are using social media, Facebook hashtag payments and Twitter hashtag payments in a big way. So I guess based on the experience, bankers are always a herd mentality. One thing clicks, then everyone will start offering that. So we'll just wait for Kotak's experience.
Okay. Yes, Jay, anything?
No, I just wanted to actually give a experience that StanChart actually has experimented in Singapore very, very recently, at least I think not more than 6 months back, that we tied up with a telecom partner there, Singtel, and we launched a mobile wallet along with them called Dash. And one of the interesting use cases that we actually thought that, okay, Dash is a app that a young Singaporean could go ahead and use it for making payments, for going and buying a burger from McDonald's and just using it from his Dash account. He's able to open an account, get a great interest rate online. He's able to take an advance online, so if he wants a short-term personal loan, he can take it on his app. He wants to buy insurance, he can do it straight away. So there's a bunch of stuff, and we really thought that getting the largest telecom player in Singapore with a leading bank there is a win-win situation. And what we realized is that 1 month after the launch is that the biggest use case Dash had is, imagine that we as a panelist go out for lunch or dinner, and people were to split the bill, right? So it's about P2P payments while splitting the bill. It's about making the payment to the cab driver or in a seamless manner. And what we notice is that each and every day we're getting new and new use cases for driving the adoption of the Dash wallet per se. As and when we enter into that space in India in a big way, with the advent of payment banks, and you would have read in the papers about a bunch of applicants having come in, and we know for the fact that many of them will end up launching their respective apps, to drive the mobile wallet usage, etc., because it's a cheaper way of making payments, of storing money, etc. But at the end of the day, it's very critical. What we realize is that the use cases get defined over a period of time. It will be a different use case for a tier 2, tier 3. It will be a different use case for a metro tier 1. And we need to be ready to ensure that we cover the ecosystem in a big way. Also the learning for us was that we didn't have enough merchants adopted, by Dash. And tomorrow, if somebody were to make an electronic payment via Dash, the merchants needed to accept the Dash payment. And so the feedback that we've got is that we need to cover the merchant ecosystem in a big way, and thereby we actually saw the Dash volumes pick up. And that's the learning for all of us, that we need to cover the whole set of retailers in the country. We need to cover the whole set of, let's say, e-tailers in the country where acceptance is there. And how do we really drive usage of mobile monies to making transactions in a big way, so that we reduce cash across the strata of society. And as Vibhu will tell you that even today, almost 60% of Snapdeal sales happen through cash on delivery. Just imagine, right? I mean, people want to see the product before they actually make the payment. And how do you really incentivize, or how do you educate the people in terms of driving electronic payment, getting, probably getting incentivized for it? As Mr. Kulkarni pointed out, in some countries you get tax rebates, you get GST rebates, and it will have to be a mix of carrot and stick approach by the government, by the tax authorities, to help drive this agenda of a cashless economy in the country.
Okay. Yeah. I'll add one more anecdote. I think I've been telling a lot of stories, but then they are going to be real stories. The last one is, he was talking about e-tailers and the other retailers coming into the chain. Another small project that we have done, why I'm telling all this is because the potential, you can gauge for yourself and see what happens. We were talking so far about e-commerce sites, we were talking about banks, we were talking about things which are happening. I also made a brief mention about Aadhaar. Let's talk about this Bajiwali from Jumritalaya. How does she get benefited out of the digital scenario that we are talking about? A small project was done there. She also has this mobile phone, which the only thing which is there in that is that it also is enabled for NFC or near-field communications. So this small project which was done, not exactly in Jumritalaya, but then I just use the name, is one of the villages in the northeast again. What we try to do is, she goes around selling her vegetables, okay? And I'm one of the villagers there who wants to buy from her. Let's say it's just quarter kilo of bendi. कितना है quarter kilo आज का दिन में? 10 रुपये, 8 rupees, 10 rupees quarter kilo. So I buy it from her. As soon as I buy it from her, I don't need to give a 10 rupee note and get 2 rupees cash as change, which is very difficult to get today. So one of the things we have tried to do is, in her mobile, that is the person, in my mobile, there is a small amount of money converted and treated as e-cash already. One change, which I thought I will tell you all before I come back to this anecdote, is that in India, one of the things that we have taken a decision is that it is physical cash which will be converted into electronic cash. We are not going away on the Bitcoin route or the e-cash route, the way the cash is created by other than the central bank. So at some point of time, the money gets converted into electronic cash, typically at banks or points of sale. So I have in my mobile phone, let's say 100 rupees with me. So I buy this quarter kilo of bendi from the Baji Wali. She brings a mobile, I take my mobile. A small message comes from her mobile to me saying this is the amount. She doesn't know to read or write, so I just make 8 rupees. It got the numbers in that. I just press in 8. The moment I press in 8, because of the NFC authentication, it sends across a message to her mobile. There is no need for any network-based connection in this, which is something which is not available in the rural area. It is also authenticated because it is between my mobile and her mobile. There's no additional second factor authentication required because when I press that 8 rupees, it is through. My account, which had 100 rupees, becomes 92. Her account, which let's say had 20 rupees, becomes 28. So the transaction is complete. There's no physical exchange of cash at all. There's no electronic ordering. There is no delivery. There is no cash on delivery the way it is there. But still, it has happened the traditional way we had. At the end of the day, she goes to some telephone operator. The telephone operator's job is telecommunication. He gets connected to the bank. She's got that NFC mobile, which gets connected to his device, gets connected to the bank. Her account in the bank gets upgraded to the total value of the money that has been received. Debits happen to all the other mobile accounts from where the debits have taken place. Settlement is arrived at. It could be end of day. It could be any time she goes somewhere. This is another experiment we are trying to do. This doesn't use the current USSD and IMPS, but then again, we'll have to see whether it succeeds. If it succeeds, this will be something which will be a boon for the normal, common retail man. The question which is asked is, for the Jan Dhan Yojana, there is some subsidy coming into the account. How is the money going to be taken out? Is there an ATM nearby? Chances are the answer is no. Is there a bank nearby? Certainly not. Is there a business correspondent? Maybe yes, but he may not be coming every day. So if the farmer wants to go and buy, let's say, fertilizer from a shop, he can use this technology if it is feasible. Now here is a space which is available. Those of the IT vendors who are here, if you feel there is an opportunity here, you can try to exploit it. Those of the banks which are here can try to see it. Again, this is at an experimental stage. We'll have to perfect it. It may take a few months to perfect it. But the message I wanted to say is, we are on the way towards digitization of cash, and this is what is going to be the future. So the sooner we move over to digital cash, I think it'll be better for us. Yeah, I think we've been doing a lot of talking. We'll stop with this. We can have time for a few quick questions. Yeah. Can the mic be given over?
So thank you very much for a very invigorating and insightful panel discussion. My question is, you spoke briefly about security. We're also seeing incidents of malware-based security incidents on phone, and with the uptake of the Android device, there's also easily infected by malwares, which can potentially even steal SMSs, etc. So is there a posture on that? Are you as leading bankers thinking about securing that channel as well?
I will give an answer from a technical perspective. Today, if you go by the IT Act of India, non-repudiation of a transaction is validated by what is called as a digital signature. And there is a body just like RBI called CCA, Controller of Certifying Authority, which certifies the digital signature certificates issuance authorities. So the transactions that are authorized using this certificate is a standard called PKCS 12. Very recently, PKCS 12 on mobile has been approved in principle. So very soon, a digital certificate can be deployed onto your mobile. Just like an SSL certificate which is already there on your smartphone, you will have another certificate, but this time it will be a modified PKCS 12. And then you will be able to authenticate a transaction, so any kind of malified or malware attacks can be prevented. But it's a technical explanation, not a product explanation.
I'll just add a little bit more comfort to all of you. The Reserve Bank also has another institute in Hyderabad, which is called the Institute for Development and Research in Banking Technology. One of their prime focus area is on mobile-based payments. And within that, the subset is on security. There's a lot of work which is going on there. Just to add to your comfort, possibly there are two countries in the world which are leading in mobile security. One is Israel, and the second is India. Sometimes we are ashamed to call ourselves and pat our back saying that we are good, like the Mars mission that has gone in and the one which is going to Chandrayaan. We are good in security. I do agree there are gaps, there are incidents which have taken place, but if you look at the big picture and see how many incidents versus the total number of transactions, the position is not alarming. To just add to what Aditya was just saying, the length of the key which is available in these securities, I'm going a little bit technical, is 1024K. The US uses 64 today. We are using 1024. Now you take a call on whether that is adequate or not, but that gives you the additional level of security. It's a rat race. I build up a security which is foolproof, but there's somebody who's out there to break into it. The moment he breaks into it, I have to enhance. For the period that that enhancement doesn't happen, there is a risk. During that period, well, we'll have to think about alternate methods like insurance or making good or agreements, etc. The moment it is plugged, things are fine. Again, somebody breaks it. It's a rat race that keeps continuing. And as long as the average Indian intelligent brain is there, I'm sure they'll keep breaking the security that is there. But nevertheless, as far as digital transactions is concerned, for small value transactions, we shouldn't be overtly concerned about it, because at least from the Reserve Bank side, we have seen media says there are a lot of security problems. There are incidents, I'm not saying no, but the total percentage compared to what it was in the paper-based world is not really alarming. So we can still go on. The bandwagon is available for us to join.
With no more questions, we would now be ending this session.
Yeah, if there are no more questions, I can only conclude by two things. I think the Reserve Bank has a last right to have the... Either it means that you have understood whatever we have said, or possibly you have not understood anything. I would take the first one and say that, well, whatever the panelists have tried to push it from our side has been well received by all of you, and hope to see at least this group moving over on a digital cash very soon. Thank you. Yes.
I would request Mr. S. Ganesh Kumar to give away the speaker mementos to his co-chairs at the dais. To Mr. M.C. Kulkarni, GMIT Transaction and Operations, Bank of Maharashtra. Oops. To Mr. Aspe Engineer, President and Country Head, ATM, Yes Bank. To Mr. Jayant Bhatia, Head Digital and Payment Initiatives, Standard Chartered Bank. To Mr. Aditya Chugle, Head Electronic Banking, IndusInd Bank. And Mr. Vibhu Arya, Head of Strategical Partnerships and Alliances, Snapdeal.com. I would request Mr. M.C. Kulkarni to give the speaker memento to our wonderful chair, Mr. S. Ganesh Kumar, CGM and in charge, Department of IT, Reserve Bank of India. Thank you, sir, for taking over the session. We would request you for a group photograph.